Well, I just want to help people, so I'm not going to put my price up because I thought it was, if I was being honest with myself, it's easier to sell at a lower price. You know, if it's not scary, I think it's the wrong goal. You think about that technically. If it's not scary, there's no growth. There's no growth, which means, and my goal is to grow remember what I said earlier, my goal is to grow my competence and my value. Well, that means I have to do scary stuff. I have to. Otherwise, there's no growth. If it's comfortable, it's not growth.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. First of all, Moe Choice, I love your name, and it's your name and also the name of your business. And I was telling you before we jumped on that the universe is giving me all the signs, because today I've interviewed a woman who she liquidated her 401k. She did all of this stuff to fulfill a dream when other people didn't believe in her. And she now has a successful business helping children like her own with disabilities and a nonprofit, and has just gotten it back in spades. And that was such an inspiring story to start my day. And then building on that, hearing from people who are working with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, using techniques that help us all reframe the way that we are trained, right? Reframe the language we use for ourselves. And so I'm really intrigued and excited about this conversation we're about to have. So thank you, Mo.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit about some of the businesses you've represented, but you've done so much. You've had multiple businesses, 12 businesses from scratch. You've exited. You've made a lot of money. You've had downfalls. Let's just dig right into all of it, because these are the stories that really help everybody grow and understand the experiences. While they're all unique, we all have these ups and downs. And helping one more person navigate by listening to your story is just a phenomenal gift. Did you always strive to be an entrepreneur? Did you work for other people first? And how did you fall into or get into what you do now and what you did in all of your businesses?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that I decided very early that I didn't trust adults.
Oh, no.
Probably by the age of 3, because it makes sense to me now, because it's like I'm looking at them going, they don't know what they're doing. So why am I going to pay attention to what they tell me? And also I decided very quickly that I would only care about someone's opinion if they had what I wanted. So if someone's giving me their opinion, but they don't live the life I wanted to live, then why should I care about their opinion? And then this manifested as I matured into, if they don't know what I want exactly, then why should I care about their opinion? And so I think all of these seeds got planted very young, really. And so, okay, if I don't trust adults, then I must have decided pretty early that I had to figure out my own way. And then the question becomes, well, where were you going? I don't know, really. It's just stay alive and find something that's fun and entertaining and that will give me money. I mean, that was literally it. It was nothing more complex than that. And so I made money selling bootleg CDs. So we used to have like a canteen or whatever in school, whatever you call them, where they used to sell like donuts and stuff. And they were, I don't know what they're called. They look like hot dogs, but instead of the sausage, it's cream. And instead of a bun, it's like a cake. I can't remember what they're called, but they were very popular, and they only seemed to have 6 of them in the school at any. So I used to run and buy the 6 and then sell them at a small profit. So that was like at 13, 14. So I think I was entrepreneurial, let's say. And then I started selling bootleg CDs, hip hop CDs. This is before MP3s, before the internet. And then I started curating. So I'd see what people liked, what kind of music they liked. And so I put that music together and sell that at a much bigger price. And that's when I realized that if you do the hard work that people are too lazy to do or don't know how to do, you can make profit from that. So I understood business from that perspective, like just do things. And I loved it. I loved listening to music and trying to figure out what to put together. So it was like, this is fun and I can make money from it. Great. I'll just keep doing that then. But I couldn't keep doing that, because the internet internet came out and MP3s and Napster and all that stuff. And also, I couldn't just keep doing illegal activities, to be honest. So I took like a 6-month trip and I spent all my money just to have fun after I graduated from university. And I came home and my father basically said, how did you afford this? And he knew I was lying to him. So then he said, you've got 3 days to find a job or you get out of the house. So I picked up the newspaper and the first advert was, do you speak well on the phone? If so, you can make money, commission money. So I picked up the phone. They asked me to sell them something, kind of like the Jordan Belfort sell me the pen. It was something like that. I tried to sell them whatever they asked me to sell, and then they gave me the job. That was literally the first phone call I ever made. And so work career-wise. So I went in, that was like a Thursday or something. I went in on the Monday, started, made commission-only sales as a salesman on the phone, pre-internet, or the internet just started. And that was my only really ever job, really. I mean, I became bankrupt when I lost everything in 2015. So I got some little jobs, interim CEO. I worked in a pub for a few nights a week just to make some money while I was figuring out my next move. So I've done little jobs here and there. I worked in Pizza Hut when I was younger, like things like that, but never like a career job. I never had that, really. And so from the commission only, my cousin had a photo business. Remember when we used to print photographs from cameras? So he had one of those, come and print your in 1 hour photo kind of thing. And he had an empty basement. And I went to him and I said, look, I think I can turn the basement into a business. You're paying rent for it anyway. And so I took the basement off him. I went into partnership with him. And then I started dealing with digital photography and photographers and art dealers and things like that through photography. And I built a business out of this basement without really knowing what I was doing. And then that led to the next business and the next business. And so every business, and we can go into the detail if you want to, but every business that I started was a direct result of an opportunity from the previous business. And it was basically, I'm bored of that. I know how to do that now. Let me do the next thing. That's basically what it was.
That's incredible.
Maybe, but if I was a bit more disciplined and able to deal with boredom, I would have been a lot richer and a lot more stable in my life. So there is a downside to the chaos. Yeah.
Yes. Well, is the chaos, I mean, it sounds like, did you have a little bit of a tumultuous upbringing? Did you have ADHD?
No, I don't. Maybe I don't. I've never looked at being diagnosed and stuff like that. But I had a normal upbringing. Like my parents loved me very well, and they treated me fine, I suppose. I mean, as tumultuous as any child probably. But there was nothing unusual about my surroundings. We did move. I grew up in Dubai, so my dad was in Dubai from the early days, pre-Bling Dubai, where it was just desert and community and beach, and we didn't have much to do there. So I was very used to having a lot of people around me. And then they got up and moved to the UK. And so suddenly I ended up in a place where I didn't have anyone around me. I didn't like the weather. I always say I swapped sunshine and beach for sarcasm and rain. I didn't like the English people. I hated my parents for moving me. I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the lifestyle. I didn't like the food. I didn't like the weather. And so that took me a good few years to adapt. And I think that's what brought out my rebellious, I don't know if I could swear, but my FU, I'm going to do things my way for sure now side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the age of 12, though. 11, 12. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you, after age of 12, of course, you already have this worldview that's maybe a little glass half empty and very independent. Right. So it makes sense that you work with solopreneurs now. But then you had this series of successes that you kind of fell into, which I think it is really interesting because it doesn't sound like they were necessarily what you wanted to do, but it was just something like you said, it sparked your interest at the moment in time and you were good at them. Whether you knew that you were going to be good at them at first or not, you figured out your way.
I wasn't good at them. I was good at putting ideas together and bringing the chaotic, a startup needs chaos. It needs that energy. It needs we don't know what we're doing and we're going to figure it out energy. And I'm very comfortable with that. I'm curious about why you said the glass half full, because although I understand maybe why you said it, but I'm curious why in fact, before I say anything else, why did you?
Oh, glass half empty?
Yeah. Glass half empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you're saying at the age of 3, you'd already formulated these ideas that seem very cynical. And that you needed to do things for yourself, that you didn't really like, if people didn't have an opinion that had to do with what you wanted to talk about or that would directly reflect upon you, you kind of just put them aside.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Got it. I got it. I think I look at that as glass half full. I'll tell you why.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
it's not that maybe I presented it in a, skeptical or it's not that I looked at the world and said, "Oh my God, I don't trust anyone." It was I looked at the world and thought, "Okay, great, I'm going to go on my own adventure." It was more that. And actually, one of the things I think that I bring to the table is I genuinely look for what can go right, not what can go wrong. I'm like so not risk averse because I just don't look at any of the downside. So it was interesting that but obviously you've only met me for a few minutes and it's the words that I'm using. But it was interesting that you brought that up. But I don't have kids. So already I don't have this, what would happen if I did this to I never had that. And also, and by the way, I also know this is a proper tangent, but I remember hearing someone very wise tell an older man off. And I can't remember what the circumstances were, but she said, "You don't have any kids and you're not married, which is why you're not embarrassed by your actions." And I sat and I said, "What is she talking about?" And I now know what she's talking about. Because when you don't have someone to face your shame at home with, then you pretty much do whatever the hell you want. And I think the mark of somebody is that they can do whatever they want and not care about anyone, but still behave in a proper way. And I think once I realized that, I started to become more serious as a player. But I don't have anyone that's dependent on me, which means I can fail and survive. And my attitude was always, worst case, I'll get a job in a bar or a restaurant and I'll probably become a manager within a few months. That was always my idea. And I'll earn a decent living and have I love hospitality. So I'd have a lot of fun and great. That's the worst case scenario. That was my strong belief, which means I was able to take risks and do things that maybe other people wouldn't have done.
Yeah. Talk to us about some of those risks.
Spending money I didn't have, borrowing against things that I don't, doing bank loans and facilities, basic things like that. Starting a new business when the other one hadn't yet established itself, spending time away from certain tasks that I needed to probably pay attention to with this idea that maybe they'll figure themselves out, trusting other people without really no proof that I should have trusted them, but like hope, hope is not a plan, and I had a lot of hope, which is why I was surprised by the glass half empty. Yeah. Because I used to just assume everything's going to work itself out.
Nice. No, but I think that's a perspective. Many of us who are entrepreneurs who don't have like a solid business finance background, having worked for a big corporation before we jumped into entrepreneurship, do have that attitude of it'll figure itself out. We'll just do it. And it can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse, right? So
I think good cop, bad cop is a really good analogy for this, in the sense that if you think of good cop as the people person, the one who's interested in people and ideas and what people feel and creating experiences and bringing people together and listening and motivating and empowering. And then the bad cop's the one who just wants things done. So in business terms, that would be the CEO and the COO. And you see it in sports too, Annika, where if you have a top coach in a high level sports team, often his right hand would be either the tactical, do things properly, regimented type guy, and he would be the people inspiring, or vice versa. And you've seen that play out in sports and business and marriages and a lot. And I don't think we can do it on our own if we want to do something big, let's say, and legacy defining. I think we need it's the yin and yang. We need the order and the chaos. We need the emotion and the logic, and we need the balance between the two. It took me a long time to understand that. A long time.
Well, you had a pinnacle moment where you walked away from the things you were doing and decided you wanted to put more into others, perhaps more into your own self. Can you talk about
later? Yeah, the first part was I need to kill this version of myself. That was the first decision. So whatever version this is of me, it took me about 3 years to realize that I had to kill this version completely. Like there was no keep the good parts and change the bad parts. There was no such thing. It's like either you get rid of the car as a whole or you and buy a new car or you're stuck with this car. And so that's the story of death and rebirth, which is an old story that's been played out in all the classic literature. And so that's the first lesson I learned, that I have to kill this version of Moe to then create the version that I want to be. That was the first part. Then it was, okay, what do I want? But it was hard enough dealing with that first before I could give any attention to the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you find that defining moment that told you that you needed to completely go through a rebirth? Because that's a really difficult decision to make. It has to take a lot of reflection or something big, major to happen in your life. And like you said, if you have children, it's not an easy thing to do. And I've had to reinvent myself many times, but I also have to do it in the context of still being a mom. So
the first thing was my best friend passed away from a heart attack at the age of 38, which was an absolute, like, I can't imagine many things shocking your work or I put into question everything about how I understood the world to be, everything on the back of that one thing. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I became corrupted as a result. So I started lying, I started deceiving people, I started doing things to harm people, not in a way that was, to me, that was a big deal, but it was still corrupted. And so what happened was I didn't realize that I was corrupted. So the second thing was when I realized I was corrupted, that something was wrong with me now fundamentally, and that I was lying to myself, actually. So when I realized that, that was the second big, let's say, nail in the coffin or whatever you want to call it. And then the third thing was I wanted to get out of my businesses, but I had investors. And so it came to a point where either they did it my way or I did it their way. And it was a stalemate. So the business couldn't run with both of us there, and neither of us was willing to give up what we wanted. So I ended up leaving Dubai to force their hand, actually. And because of ego, we just burnt the whole business down because we wouldn't come up with a compromise. So that really ended it. But there is a but. I knew when I got on the flight that I wasn't coming back to Dubai. I knew that the business would end, even though part of me was like, maybe they'll see sense and maybe they will. I knew this was the end. And I saw that as an opportunity. And I'll never forget when I was on the airplane and I could see Dubai underneath. I felt such a sense of relief and optimism that I didn't know where it came from. It was quite overwhelming. And when I sat and journaled it out, I realized that I knew then that I could do whatever I wanted. A quote from the movie Fight Club came to my mind, which is only when you lose everything are you free to do anything. And so I realized at that precise moment that I can now do whatever the hell I want. And so the only thing left was my parents, because they had friends and family in Dubai and they had a reputation there. And it was, because I knew they were going to make up stuff about me and, and he stole and he ran away and all this stuff. So I was like, how do I deal with my parents? And so I spent the next 6 months being honest with my parents. And here's the good thing about that. If you don't care what your parents think, then you're not going to care what anyone else thinks. And so I tried to figure out a way, and I did, of how not to care what my parents think. By being honest and open with them, by the way, not by hiding anything. And so that's what I worked on for the next 6 months. And then I went to Greece and I met my mentor and I built my plan and I didn't know what the hell I was doing and I didn't know how to get to this plan. And then I started working at it. August the 30th, 2015 is when I came up with my new plan. So it's just gone 10 years.
So talk about the new plan and your new self that emerged.
The first thing was reverse engineer it. And the next truth is the details don't matter. The life that I'm going to live every day matters. So rather than saying I want a house and this much money and I want family and kids, I started saying I want to feel energized and engaged and connected and I want to be able to do what I want and I don't want to have to answer to anyone. So then it's like, it's so precise, but it's got no detail in terms of what it looks like. which was so freeing because then it didn't really matter where I lived and with who. And so I came up with my statement, which was I'm doing what I want when I want from wherever I want to be with the people I most want to be with. That was the North Star. That was the point of everything. And so then I started to reverse engineer that. What has to happen for that to happen? Well, I have to be able to make money on my own. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
How do I do that? I always had product. I always had a restaurant or a product or a partner so how do I do that? Okay, so I have to learn how to make money on my own. Okay, how do I do that? I have to be really competent, because if I'm competent, then people will pay me for my value. Okay, well, what competence am I missing? And then I looked at the fundamentals: persuasion, sales, positioning in the market, finance, understanding planning, leadership, how to bring people together, how to plan, all the things I knew how to do in business. So I brought them in, plugged the gaps with the competencies that I didn't have, i.e. personal development. So the use of language, how to listen, how to understand people's energy, how to read between the lines, all these things I wasn't very good at. So I started to learn those things. And then suddenly I felt like I was a formidable player. But it's like, what do I do with this? And so I read this book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And in the book, he says, you teach best what you want to learn. And so I thought, okay, well, I want to learn how to be independent. So let me teach it. But then it feels like, how can I teach something I'm not? But then I realized everyone does that. Everyone talks about stuff they don't know what they're talking about. So I started to teach independent. So as I learned NLP, I taught it. As I learned, human behavior, I taught it. As I learned sales, I taught it. And I teach it to people who didn't know anything about it, usually. And so, okay, who's going to pay me for that? No one. So I taught it for free. And then I developed my competence and I built a reputation, and people started. Oh, by the way, I had one rule, Annika. I leveraged my network in Dubai big time. The rule was, if I want to be truly independent, I'm not going to pull in any favors to rebuild myself. So I didn't really, some people helped me with some things, but I can on record say that I built my life on my own, really. My family gave me stability. My parents gave me a place to stay when I was broke and bankrupt. But apart from that, in terms of the contacts I have, the people I've connected with, the people I've worked with, they're all my own. It all came from my own work. So that was super important. So in the plan, when you reverse engineer it, I started to learn about values and principles. I never had any. No one ever taught me principles. No one ever taught me that a principle is only a principle if applied always. No one taught me this stuff.
Yeah.
So I started to build my own principles and try to figure out what are the principles I want to live by. And so I started to have a personal philosophy. And then I came across Jim Rohn's work, because someone said to me, oh, personal philosophy, that's Jim Rohn. And I was like, who the hell's Jim Rohn? And so I started to learn about him, and then Tony Robbins and blah, blah, blah. And then so I started to become really interested in personal development, psychology, neuroscience. I got involved with some neuroscientists in the UK. And yeah, the idea is, how can I be more valuable today than I was yesterday? And if I'm more valuable today, then I'll make more money, because people will pay me for that value. And that's all I've been doing for 10 years, is trying to upscale or scale or expand my value. That's it.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Amazing. And so in the process of all of this, you created a program, a framework, and these were things that you tested out yourself, or these were things that you were testing while testing on people while you were helping them?
Yeah, a bit of both. I call it mentoring because I think we can all mentor. Like, let's say I have multiple pathways in my life, depending on the roles you play. So as a mother, you have a particular pathway. As a wife, you have a pathway. As a landlord, as a teacher, as a podcaster, I think you can mentor anyone who wants to walk that micro path. I think you can mentor anyone who wants to walk that path. And so when I looked at it like that, that's quite empowering, actually, because it means the belief is, there are more people who are behind me on this path than there are in front of me, alive, let's say, right? There's more people behind me than in front of me, which means there's a bigger market if I'm selling down than if I'm selling up, right? Which means I can mentor people on a vast number of things: personal development, leadership, starting a business, selling a business, exiting a business, living in Dubai, moving to Dubai, all the different types of whoever. And so I started to think about that as, okay, if I'm mentoring people that want to come up this way, I'll keep learning as they are learning what I've learned. And that's how I got to where I am, actually. And I'm very open about it. Like I'll tell people, today I did a workshop today for my latest cohort, and I'm changing the templates in front of them. I'm like, oh, that's not right. Right. We should change that to that. And that doesn't make sense. I'm absolutely fine with that. It's like,
Well, it
it's
makes you
constant
real.
iteration.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but it's constant iteration. It's constantly, if I see something to improve, I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. And I think people are way more forgiving when you're like that, actually. The flawed genius, that the idea that you'd prefer the flawed, John Lennon was more loved than Paul McCartney because Paul McCartney was like, seemed perfect, and John Lennon was more flawed. You know what I mean? It's that kind of idea. Yeah.
So what does life look like for you today?
I'm doing pretty much what I want when I want, from wherever I choose to be, with the people I most want to be with. I love my work. Like, I don't wake up any day looking at my calendar and going, oh, why am I? That was my life, by the way. That was my life 10 years ago. It's like, why am I doing this? It was my life 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, oh my God, I got a meeting with this guy now. Why am I doing this? And why am I teaching this? And why am I doing a workshop on this? And why am I doing a partnership with this person? And that's getting less and less. Even recently, very recently, I stopped a couple of partnerships that I had going on because it's like I wasn't excited by it.
Yeah. So you've kept that principle. I mean, even when you went through your rebirth of you need to be excited about something.
Yeah, I don't think I had any principles growing up, honestly. I mean, I think my parents tried to instill, but I think they had different principles about them and it was never clearly presented to me. I probably had some subconscious principles before 10 years ago, but I don't think I did. I think my principles were a convenience and desire, just do what you want without really, yeah. But I think this idea of being engaged, right? Like feeling alive by a conversation, by an activity. It's like that's easy to find, I think, honestly. I don't think it's so difficult to find this. And it's like, why am I doing? And again, I don't have kids and you know what I mean? But it's like, but I chose not to have kids. I could have had kids. I chose not to. So it's like, that was also a choice. That's where the name Moe Choice came from. The brand Moe Choice, by the way, that was born August the 30th, 2015, because it's this idea in NLP that more choice is better than less choice. But you have to know what you want. So if I know what I want precisely, then more choice is good. If I don't know what I want, then it's overwhelming. It's too much chaos. So you imagine if I said I want a pair of shoes, and then you said, what kind of shoe? I don't know. It's like you'd have to show me every kind of shoe. Whereas if I said I'm willing to spend $200, they have to be red, comfortable. I should be able to play tennis with them and go out with them. They should be from a good brand. They should blah, blah, blah. Then I want as much choice within those criteria as possible. Right. And that all starts with reverse engineering what you really want. So if I want to do what I want, when I want, from wherever I want to be with whoever I want to be with, then I want as much choice in terms of how to get there as possible, obviously.
When you started this iteration of your business, because what you do is, you teach people, right, solopreneurs, to grow to 15 to 50,000 a month. What was that first 15 to 50,000 months like for you? And is that the moment you said, oh, I'm onto something. I have my framework. I have this program. I'm going to keep iterating on them, but this is also something I can teach to people now.
Yeah, so my goal was $15,000 at the time because I worked out that was enough for me to live a decent life. And so I tried to get to the 15. When I did, I started showing people how I got to the 15. That's when the frameworks developed, by the way, because I would talk and then come up with the framework as I was talking and go, oh, yeah, so it's because it's position and then offer and then outreach. Like, I never thought of that before. It's just as I was talking. And then they started to get results. And I was like, okay, if they follow my process, they get results too. Great. And then I kept improving. So the 15 became 50, which is a lot easier, but it was a lot easier for me to get from 15 to 50 than it was from 0 to 15. Because you know what works. You have the money to spend on things. You can take risks. I've hired a couple of people to come in, a VA to come and help me, and a partner to come and run a couple of things that I didn't want to do. So as I kept learning, the value got better and the clients got results quicker and better results. And so I kept putting my price up. January and February, we sold out in November, the January and February cohort.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm putting my prices up because it's selling out. It's like if if you're selling out of cake in your cake shop every day, then it's okay to put the price up by 20 cents or
Absolutely.
whatever it is. So, and then I think, okay, so if I put the price up, Annika, then I need to bring more value. How do I bring more value? And so I think about people coming in and doing different parts of the program, or us improving the quality or the support. I'm starting to learn AI. I've brought in a couple of AI experts to show me how we can use it. So it's like, because I want to learn for me. And so I'll just teach them what I'm learning and put that as part of the course and charge more.
Amazing.
That's business. You know, everyone makes that mistake in business. It's like in business, you need to make profit, which means you need to charge more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, well, I can't charge more. That coffee shop's selling coffee at $3. And that, well, how can I charge $5? Make it better coffee, make it a better service, add things to it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't
Yeah.
understand why people don't think that way.
You've gone through a lot of the work, the NLP, other things. If you haven't figured out how to reframe your brain, it's really hard to realize your value. And I just went through this yesterday where I'm like, oh, I like to really help people. I want to set my prices for this thing I'm launching next week at this price. And I get on the phone and the people who are helping me are like, no, you have to 5X that. Like you're way undercharging, and it's actually worth even more than that, because then you do all these other things that somebody won't get out of this, and you have this value because you live in, this is your daily world. But it's hard because then it's like, oh, but you want to help people who maybe can't afford it. But so I'm in that process right now of trying to reframe my own viewpoint and brain, because I do know my value, but you can say you know your value, but do you really feel it inside? And that, I think, is what limits people.
100% right. And also, I think sometimes, for me at least, it was an easy excuse. It was an easy reason to say, well, I just want to help people, so I'm not going to put my price up, because I thought it was, if I was being honest with myself, it's easier to sell at a lower price. You know, if it's not scary, I think it's the wrong goal. You think about that technically. If it's not scary, there's no growth. There's no growth, which means, and my goal is to grow remember what I said earlier, my goal is to grow my competence and my value. Well, that means I have to do scary stuff. I have to. Otherwise, there's no growth. If it's comfortable, it's not growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really easy to want to be comfortable.
One of my closest friends, I say he's got two principles: comfort and convenience.
Mm.
That's his two principles.
So you mentioned cohorts and selling out. So is this that you have new cohorts starting in each month, or is this, yeah?
So very intensive, handful of people, very intensive for 4 weeks, because this is all the rewiring, the reframing, the thinking about what you really need to think about, getting rid of the excuses, showing them that they can work hard every day by taking action. Like the consequences, you miss a session, you're out the course. You miss a session, there's no guarantee. You miss a session, you're not catching up with anyone else. You're late. I don't start the sessions until everyone's in the waiting room. So if someone's late, it's like we started, everyone waited 20 minutes for you. It's like I'm showing them personal responsibility. And I'm showing them that there is no excuse for doing the things that you need to do to get to where you want to get. There's no excuse. Because the thing is, usually there's no consequences. Usually it's like, what's going to happen? What's the worst case? Okay, I might not go on holiday this week, or I might have to give up dinner for a couple of nights, or, you know what I mean? It's the consequences aren't heavy. It's the desperation, inspiration kind of idea. So I create a desperation. It's like a false desperation, but I create the conditions where failure is not an option, right? Because you're failing in front of the group, you're failing yourself. I remind them of how much money you've invested, thousands of dollars, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Some people, you invested $10,000, and you're just going to throw it all away because you wanted to be late, because you had a barbecue to go to, or whatever it is. It's like, so that's the intensive part. And then it becomes, okay, now you're ready, go to market and I'll support you. Because no one cares about my opinion or my feelings, right? The least of all the market. She doesn't care. The market doesn't wake up and say, Mo thinks he's got a good product, let's prove him right. Or Mo's really excited by this, let's give him some encouragement. The market's ruthless. So the only opinion that matters is the market. And she will tell us very, very quickly if we have something valuable or not. And the way she tells us is she brings us attention and money. So my job is to get them ready for that battle with the market, so that they can then tangle with the market and negotiate with the market and navigate the market until they find something that the market's interested in. That's my job, is to prepare them for. It's like you can face the dragon, but you better be prepared, because otherwise the dragon will rip you to shreds. So I prepare them for the dragon, and the dragon's the market, right?
So who is the perfect person to come into your programs? Because I imagine also, depending on what kind of business you have, because, right, you're helping people make money and not have to work full-time hours. If you have a product, service, I mean, right?
Yeah. So watch. So I don't know how much detail you want to go in, and you can ask me if you want me to expand on it. But for me, the offer is the outcome that they will get at the end. It's not the product or the service or the mechanism. It's at the end, when I no longer have to see you, what do I have? So you think about an airline, their offer is to get you to New York. Their offer isn't the airplane.
Right.
If you don't know that you're going to get to New York, you're not interested in that conversation. Well, let's think of our services the same way. If I worked with you, Annika, right, you're going to create a brand for me that's recognized in my space. That's the outcome. Okay. Then it becomes, well, how are you going to get me there? Well, by any means necessary, in my opinion. So I want to work with people who say, by any means, I want a handful of customers too. And I want to give them everything I've got to get them exactly where they want to be. And if I do that, I'm going to make a lot of money, and they're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah. I love all of the things that you're saying. I mean, I'm reframing some things in my own mind in real time. So, which is always the best. So we're going to wrap up this conversation. We will have many more in the future, I hope, Mo.
I hope so too.
So obviously, mochoice.com. Really easy to get all of your webinars, and you have programs up there that people can review. What is one quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto, words that continue to motivate you to bring this motivation to solopreneurs and kind of put their feet to the fire?
That's a good question. The sooner you can make peace with your past and use it to create a better tomorrow, the faster you will get to where you want to get to. Like, we did what we could with the awareness and the pressure and the stress and the factors that were made available to our awareness, by the way, it's only what we're aware of that matters. We did the best we could for us selfishly most of the time. And whatever happened, happened. And if we get punished for it, we get punished for it. There's no point punishing ourselves twice. And I think if you've made a mistake that you got punished for, and then you keep thinking about it, you're punishing yourself twice for the same thing. So I think this is super important, to just accept that you did the best you could given the circumstances. And now it's time to do better and just focus on that.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been a really fun conversation. We've gone a lot of places.
Yeah. Chaos. I told you, chaos.
Yeah, but that's I guess that's one of my favorite places to be as well. So everybody who's listening, thank you so much for being here. Please leave us a rating review. Check out Mo's work and think about your purpose, your vision, your mission, what you want to do to move to the next step in your life and your business.
I have something. So mochoice.com, it's MOE, by the way, mochoice.com/podcast, right? They can get an invite to my next masterclass, live masterclass. And I'll go through my whole process then and answer any questions you have. And because they're guests from your show or listeners from your show, there'll be a couple of frameworks that I'll give as bonuses as well that they can use immediately. So that could be something that you could offer your audience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely have that in the show notes as well. And maybe I'll share it in a couple of other places. So thank you again, Mo. This was really fun conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to everybody.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Of course. And everybody who's watching this episode, listening to it, take this inspiration with you into your day. Think about how you can make more money doing things that you love to do. I think most of us, that's the ideal, right? We aspire to be like Mo, live where we want, doing what we want. I'm not saying this in the correct order, but with the people that we want to. And
for as long as possible.
For as long as possible, yes. Thank you to everybody who's listening again, and thank you to Mo. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.